We are now live. I think. Let's wait for the public view to catch up, but I think we are live. We are. Okay, we are good to go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 1 of the Script and Style podcast. I am Todd Gardner, and my co-host David Walsh is also here with us. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Marc Grabanski from Front End Masters and other jQuery fame. Before we jump
way back in the day.
But before we jump into that, David, how's it going? How's life?
Life is okay, but I have to tell you, for Christmas, my wife wanted like some home automation stuff, right? She wanted some stuff that, she could figure out what was going on at home. So we got Nest cameras, right? And they're really nice. We got 3 of them. They're they're in different parts of the house. But the most frustrating thing about them is that as somebody who works from home, I'm getting pinged on my phone every 30 seconds that the camera sees movement in the kitchen. The camera sees movement at the front door, right? And it's me. And it's like the most distracting thing in the world. Do you have home automation stuff that
I do. I bought a few things in the Smart Things universe over Christmas and tried to prototype it out in my office here. Just basic things like a motion sensor and a light switch so that all the lights would turn on together and turn off together. It is flaky. Maybe it's just my expectations, but from compared to a regular light switch, it's infuriating how often it doesn't work. They'll walk into the office and the lights just won't turn on, or that I'll be sitting here working and all the lights will turn off. And it's just,
wait, so what's supposed to manage the lights?
Well, so I have a Smart Things hub, which is like a Samsung, network device. And there's a bunch of smart light bulbs and smart switches that talk to it. And I've, written little automation blurbs for them so that they turn on and turn off. But sometimes they just lose connection. And it's just these are the kinds of devices that it's not okay when they don't work. It's right. I have things to do today. I don't want to spend time messing around with my light bulbs because I can't get anything done.
That's the thing, right? These things can be so helpful, but when they don't work, they're incredibly infuriating, right?
Yeah. But enough about that. That's a topic for a different
episode.
One thing,
I don't know if swearing is allowed on this podcast, but the Internet of Shit Twitter account is pretty much the best thing ever.
Yeah, I agree. And swearing is A-okay. You be you, man. You be you. All right, so let's welcome our guest today, my friend Marc Grabanski, another local Minneapolis, St. Paul resident. Marc, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe a quick origin story about how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So I'm a Midwestern, was born and raised here, as you both were, right?
Right.
Or continue to stay in the Midwest. You weren't sucked into the Silicon Valley bubble.
I don't know what we're thinking with the snow, but right.
Yeah.
It's not so bad.
Yeah. The benefits of living here outweigh the cold, I think. But yeah, so I was born and raised here and, sort of felt really disconnected from the world and just not really, just in high school, etc., just didn't feel, middle school, whatever, didn't feel connected. And then once I found the internet, I think I was 13, 14. And just, ever since there, just being able to reach out to all these resources and people online and stuff like that. Just, so I'm a child of the internet and now I run Front End Masters. I just, we run sort of professional targeted education for front end engineers, and we're kind of going out beyond that lately. But yeah, so I'm just a Midwestern, built a business here, and now I run Front End Masters, which I'm really, really proud of. And before that, basically wrote the date picker, the jQuery UI date picker. It was just kind of like my claim to fame back in the day. But yeah,
Not back in the day. I still see the jQuery UI date picker on one site, at least one site every day.
Yeah, it's pretty much all the web-based software I use. It's like my code staring at me from over a decade ago. Yeah, so that's interesting. But yeah, just I don't know. Do you want me to talk about today or my origin story or what?
Well, yeah, let's do the origin story, because it's really interesting that you call yourself a child of the internet, right? And I think that our age range is sort of exactly that, right? Like, at least the three of us.
Well, we're the first generation to really like see the world without the internet, and then be open to all these possibilities of all these resources and connecting with people online and all that kind of stuff.
Totally. So how did you, like, what happened in between you sort of discovering the internet and then jQuery, date picker, and front end masters? Like, what were the early days of the stuff that you were tinkering around with? What got you like really excited to enter this field?
Yeah, I mean, the first exposure to programming was the TI-83, downloading those old text-based RPGs, and then like being able to crack open the code and being like, oh, I can change stuff. So I
could play a mean game of Snake on my TI-83.
Yeah, so I built games using that basic language on the TI-83, and that was really my first exposure to programming. And also, this kid stole my code, or basically, had it on his phone and changed his name on the TI-83 game. It was called A Fighter. It was kind of like a Zelda clone. And he changed the name on it, and he got all the credit. And I was like, hey, what are you playing? Oh, you're playing my game. Oh, that's great. No, James wrote it. I was like, no. No, that is literally like my blood, sweat, and tears that somebody else's name is on this game. So,
and that ends Marc's first experience with online piracy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's that,
and we grew up with Napster, right? So we were the consumers at first, but Marc was getting hammered right away on his games.
Yo, and then also I learned about backups too, because I spent 3 months, nights and weekends and this during math class, or basically all classes, programming this game. And I hit I was cleaning up I needed more memory on the device, and I accidentally deleted the latest version of my game. And so I lost like a month worth of work, and I was just like, forget it. I'm done with this. Forget it.
No.
Yeah. So I got really heavy into programming on the calculator, but never touched it. And I kind of went into hardware after that. So I built computers. I learned to, I remember my buddy Josh kind of understood how to take apart a computer and put it back together. And I was like, I can do that. So I like rip apart the family computer. And then I'm like, oh man, my parents are going to come home. I need to like make sure this thing works. And computers were expensive back then. And so I like quickly put it all back together, and it like booted up, and it was like my heart just came out of my chest right before like trying to make this thing work again. So I got really into hardware, and I built my first business fixing people's computers, basically just removing, viruses and crap like that, and fixing just basic stuff. And then also building computers, and I set up networks and hardware and stuff for businesses in my local town. So that was sort of like going into that, and then all of a sudden like seeing the internet, like blogs kind of sprout up, and being like, wow, you can publish something and the entire world can see it. So then I was like, I want to do that. I want to master that. So that's where I kind of like went to college, kind of reset my life, had to start from scratch, because hardware is nothing like software development. And so I had to go through, figuring out Dreamweaver, dragging and dropping stuff, and table layouts. This is back before CSS was even a thing. And I got my first job after the .com bubble or bursted. And so people were like, there's no jobs in this. And so I was literally coming into a field that was like paid like trash. I was like, there wasn't a lot of jobs, but I was like, this is important. And so just kind of built layouts, HTML and CSS layouts, and transitioned from designing the thing and then building it, and really found my love in making sure that HTML is semantic and that Google can get good ratings, because I had a little bit of a marketing kind of bug in me as well, and just making sure the CSS and everything worked the way that the designers meant them to. And I just saw a lot of developers who just couldn't make the thing work how it was supposed to. And I was always like, this is important. And my boss one day came by and was like, hey, if you just did Java like enterprise development, like you're showing so much, prowess on the front end, like you should do this because you could get, 3 times the salary or whatever. And I was like, no, this is important. You guys all suck at writing HTML, and you can't make a UI for, it's like, so I don't know. I just kind of grew up in being a UI developer and really kind of caring about taking the design intent and making sure that the pixels were, perfect on the other end. And, back in the IE days, and where you had to get everything working on an old browser that everybody hates. And so that's kind of,
how is that different from today?
I don't know, man. Pretty much everybody just makes things work on Chrome today, right? Unfortunately.
Yeah.
I know you're face palming over there, but
the error tracking guy is disagreeing with today being better.
Yeah, I mean, old Android phones, all the different devices that you have to support if you're going to be sort of an enterprise, reaching the widest range for sure. But we all know that most developers today kind of seem to just focus on, the latest browsers and whatnot. But yeah, so I got involved in blogging and stuff right around the same days that David, you did. I saw it was like your blog, my blog, and a few other people talking about pure JavaScript. This is before MooTools and jQuery. There was I'm blanking on his name, but I don't know. There's just so few people blogging about pure JavaScript and whatnot. So there's a few, and I remember your stuff from back in the day, even before MooTools. And so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved with jQuery then?
Yeah, so I wrote a pure JavaScript. I wrote pure JavaScript components for work, and I always created these little components and then just put them on my website. And this is back in the SVN days, where that's pretty much all people did was share their little code snippets. And so mine was this really fast, clean calendar. I called literally clean calendar, and it was a little date picker widget, but I called it clean calendar. And when I saw jQuery, I was able to, take this library and make my clean calendar like 30 to 40% smaller, the core code base, by just using jQuery. And I was sold on that day and on jQuery itself. And there was a tiny little wiki page, in the site. There was it was a 3-page site or something. And the wiki page was like plugins, use $.fn to extend, jQuery, and you could create these plugins. And so I ported my clean calendar into a jQuery plugin, posted it on the wiki. And from there, people just pulled it down like crazy. And, I got thousands of emails with SVN diffs and feature requests and stuff like that. And so I just kind of continued to respond to those requests until I, sort of built, and Keith Wood came on board, and we sort of, once every single email that came in was solved by an option, bam, I felt like I was done. It's like, this thing does everything that everybody's requesting of it. So
that's awesome, man. That's a great feeling. While you were talking, I just looked up on my blog, and on January 26th of 2010, 8 years ago, holy shit, I wrote a blog post about how to disable specific days within the jQuery date picker widget.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I remember that post. I remember you posting that. So
Yeah, there's probably a comment in here with you correcting me.
No, it was fine.
So because I'm a big fan of sort of paying it back and thanking people, who were some of the people that helped you get into the jQuery community? Who are some of the people that like introduced you to the person working on jQuery UI? Is there anyone out there that you'd like to thank or just throw a shout out to?
I mean, John Resig himself was, you know, he was amazing. Like, and that's why jQuery blew up. Let's just be honest. I mean, it was good code, but John was amazing at actualizing the community and getting really the community together. And so, you know, Resig himself, like, I mean, you know, there's other people that came on board after him, like Paul Backhaus really kicked off the jQuery UI project, Scott Gonzalez, all these guys. But, you know, just having the ability to kind of speak at the original jQuery meetup, I think that was John himself that, you know, I pitched him on coming out there. And I remember we like met at MIT, you know, there's like 50 of us. And it was like, whoa, look at this community. There's 50 people at MIT in this like side room, you know, in 2007 for this jQuery meetup, you know, the first jQuery thing. So I don't know, just having the ability to kind of speak about the work and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, thanks to John Resig and a lot of the early contributors. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, as a MooTools guy, I've heard way too much jQuery talk. So let's jump forward. Like, what inspired you to start Front End Masters?
Yeah, for that, I had spoken at, you know, from 2007 to like 2010, I spoke at like 60 different conferences. So going from jQuery to then speaking about, you know, pure JavaScript and then eventually SVG, and pretty much all of my projects were pure SVG based. And that was like, even still today, there's not a whole lot of like application software that's, you know, fully baked on SVG. So I was, you know, really big proponent of SVG and kind of, you know, evolved and spoke at all these different conferences. And I just kind of got frustrated by conferences. And I was like, I can create a better one. And so I created like 5 or 6 different ones. And the biggest one was at Google headquarters. And we kind of took over, you know, I'm a Midwestern person taking over Google headquarters with, you know, Alex Russell and Yehuda Katz and all these people like speaking. And, you know, they did a great job. But I still was frustrated because I really wanted to do the things that, you know, like back then Yehuda was talking about, this is before Ember, he was talking about, you know, having one model and then reflecting that model throughout your UI, stuff like that. And I was like, I want to be able to do that. And I want others to be able to do that as well. But the conference doesn't seem like the right medium to do this, right? To take that, you know, bleeding edge knowledge and somebody who has experience doing that, and then, you know, give it into the hands of a lot of people. And so that's where I started running workshops. And I taught the first 6 myself, where I was like, okay, I'm going to, you know, take all this knowledge that I've accumulated in, you know, pure JavaScript and HTML and jQuery and all this stuff, and I'm going to package it into a series of workshops. And so we definitely, you know, well, and then I realized like my friends in the industry that I met through speaking are actually better at speaking and more well-known for these specific topics. So I invited them to teach individual days, and yeah, workshops were sold out and people asked for the videos. So it kind of led us on to a couple years of hell, trying to, you know, figure out the whole video thing. And people are like, I want to participate live online in these workshops. So we had to figure out live streaming. And so now, you know, it's available all under a subscription, you know, similar to some of the other big players like Lynda or whatever. But yeah, you can now access all of these workshops as video, you know, on demand. And, you know, you can participate live or you can watch them after the fact. And so it just, you know, evolved from being frustrated with conferences, teaching workshops, and then now just being able to invite the best in the world at a specific topic, them teaching it, you know, in a hands-on way and making sure that gets out to, you know, tons and tons of people. And so that's Front End Masters in a nutshell.
I've watched a couple of your training videos, and I've done one myself, and I have to say the production quality is just top notch. Like, I think I was watching the Mike North's PWA course the other day, and it was really, really well done. What do you think? So, do you see this online training platform kind of movement that you're part of as a replacement for software conferences, or do the two things kind of interoperate together?
Yeah, they're definitely a need for both. A conference has a few different elements. Like, what a conference is great at is having somebody stand out there and show like the latest, greatest, hottest thing in like 30 minutes, right? So your job as a speaker is to show some new thing, or, you know, give presence to a topic, you know, and get people excited about it, right? And, you know, it's not to teach people in depth, whatever, like that's my shtick. And that's like what I care about, is teaching people in depth. But having all these software engineers come together and have speakers, you know, teach about things that they're excited about in 30 minutes or 45 minutes is, you know, it's a good mix of just seeing what's going on, what's popping in the industry, you know, kind of getting a feel for it. But, you know, when it comes to front-end masters and online training platforms, you know, you're really trying to get production level code. You know, you're trying to go from in a topic, like learn how to build an API from scratch. Now you build an API, you use that knowledge in your job, you set up an API at work. And so that's really the difference I see between a conference where you're just, you know, it's exciting to do the hallway track thing and get to see all these people, and you see the list of topics, you go to a few you know, talks that excite you, and but you're not gonna like come out of there being like, oh, I know how to, you know, use SVG now.
Yeah,
right?
It's not exactly production ready rolling out of a conference. You're just excited about some ideas.
Right, exactly. And in order to like learn progressive web apps, you know, that's like a multi-day, you know, probably multi-week journey, you know, to really master that topic.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you see like different people learn in different ways? Like sometimes I like going off and just exploring a topic. Like I just, you know, just give me a code editor and I'm going to start like playing with an API. But like with PWAs, for some of the concepts, I felt lost to the point that I really wanted a guided tour, like just to start off with. And I think what you're doing really sets that up well.
Yep. I mean, there's definitely like, you know, the guided, having an expert really take you through for a whole day. You're going to get, you know, the 80% of the material versus like you having to piece that together, you know, on your own. So that's the goal with it. And obviously there's tons of approaches. There's screencasts, there's blog posts like David does, you know, all these kind of tools allow you to piece things together. But, you know, what we're doing is just kind of a guided tour through the 80% that you need to know.
Yeah, and I think that's really helpful. Is there going to be a front-end masters conference at some point? Like, are you going to meld these two ideas that you were talking about and use some of your resources on that front?
Yeah, I mean, that interests me, right? I mean, I've ran conferences in the past, and you know, we brought Christopher Schmidt on board as well, and he's, you know, all the summits, if you've heard of the JavaScript Summit and jQuery Summit and web accessibility, all this stuff. So he's ran like an In Control in person and CSS DevConf. So he's ran like hundreds of conferences, and I've ran, you know, like 10 or 20, right? So, I mean, definitely we have the team to do it, but right now we're just really trying to, you know, get our process down so we can release these courses, you know, within a day. So you're seeing like the best practices of GraphQL like now, right? And then you see
because they
changed
the next day. Last week, right?
Right, exactly.
Last week's best practices aren't the best practices
anymore. Right, exactly. Well, I don't think that things change that fast. I think things change, you know, when you zoom out, you're like, oh, front end is going crazy. But I mean, in reality, it's like, okay, we moved from Angular to React, and now people are getting excited about Vue. But that's in like 6 years or 5 years or something like that. Like, it's not like that crazy, right? You learn the fundamentals of JavaScript, and then you can see a new framework or something and assess it through those lenses. or that lens.
So what do you think are some of the biggest challenges? Like you mentioned that, there's a perception that the front end changes so fast. What do you see as the challenges for like web developers to learn, to spend to stay up to date on what they need to be knowing?
What are the challenges?
Yeah. Like what's hard about this? What do you think is hard about this?
What do I think? I was going to say, you guys both have been in the industry just as long as I have. Yeah, I mean, a new API comes or a new framework or whatever, and you have to get ramped up on it. But that's like the name of that's literally our job, right? So you have to be good at that. You have to not be worried about being stuck in, whatever you were comfortable in the past. And so that definitely can be a challenge for people, especially like the people who have families that don't, like to code on nights and weekends. That can be daunting if you're writing code 9 to 5 and, a new framework comes out or something that the team's all excited about, and you literally just don't have time because you've got 3 kids at home and, all these other responsibilities. So I feel like that is a big challenge. But if you're a nights and weekends developer, I mean, you live and breathe that stuff. You're like, new framework, awesome. Like, and you eat it up in a week or something, and you're like up and running on the new thing. And you're like, oh, forgot about Angular. Now I'm on React. Now you're like, oh, forgot about Vue. Now I'm on, or, forgot about React. Now I'm on Vue. So like, I don't know. I think it's more of a challenge for people who want a work-life balance, because this industry does, I mean, you're not, if you're doing hair or you're a firefighter or whatever, like, those industries, it's not like new technology is coming out every 6 months or year. But for us, that's regular, and it's just par for the course.
I think that's a really important point, because it's not that there's just 2 classes of developers, the kinds that, do nights and weekends and the ones that want work-life balance. I think we all strive for a work-life balance as we develop, as we get older, right? As we start realizing that there's other parts, there's other things that we want to do. We all kind of crave for that. And in other industries, even like, you brought up firefighters. I would hope that from time to time, firefighters take, part of their paid time to learn how to use new equipment and train themselves. And so I think we need to make that part more of a norm in our industry.
All I'm saying is it's just not every 6 months or a year like we deal with, right?
Probably.
So yeah.
I would add to that in my opinion, the frameworks, picking up a framework has gotten harder. And maybe it's just because I started when I started, but when we look at like MooTools or jQuery, or like Dojo was a little bit harder, but like they were pretty easy to pick up, right? Because they were doing less. But now you have something like React, and then Redux, and then Flow, and everything that you put on top of it. Plus you have that, sort of Webpack build step. Things have just gotten harder, in my opinion. So if you do have less time to learn this stuff, you are going to struggle a little bit more. And that's where something like an awesome service like yours can help sort of push you along and cut out loads of research, right?
Yeah. Sorry, my battery is going out. I'm going to go grab my power cable.
No problem.
So I think you definitely are onto something with that, David. Something that I've run into before when I'm trying to learn something by looking at other people's code is that like we don't show things in isolation, right? Like it's not like I can find a repository that shows off this particular technique alone. Like I'll download something, and in order to get it to work, I really have to figure out, oh, no, they used yarn. Now how do I like get that working, because I haven't used that. And then and then they use this weird like embedded database thing, and I don't have that locally, so now I have to figure out, a little bit about that. And there's really like any given, repository of decent size, there tends to be like 5 or 10 unrelated bits of technology involved that I have to learn just to like get the thing done that I want to do.
Absolutely. And we've sort of gotten to the point where we're writing as much JavaScript tooling as we are JavaScript that like makes it to the front end, right? Like our jobs have gotten much harder. We used to, again, with the earlier frameworks, we used to write our code, 90 whatever percent of the code was code that was ready to go into the browser. It just needed to be minified and, packaged, right? But now we're writing a ton of JavaScript before we even get to that point. And so everything's gotten harder. And that's why if you're somebody, when I started being a web developer, I was, 20 years old, wasn't married. I could just sit there all weekend, every night, and do exactly what, we just spoke about. But now with a wife and 2 kids and stuff, you really need to focus your time better toward this harder stuff. And so my question, Marc, I was looking at the speaker list and I was like, holy shit. Like, your presenter list is amazing. Like, I'm fans of all of these people. How do you go about getting a front-end master presenter? What is the process from the presenter side?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to speak about it other than like from my side. From the presenter side, it's definitely like if you're giving workshops, you're giving talks, you're giving all this kind of stuff out and about, I'm probably going to find out about you, right? Or like somebody on the team will kind of bring it up. But as far as we have a proposal you can form, or you can submit a proposal, that kind of thing. But in general, like if you're out there, you're participating in the community, you're teaching, like, we're probably going to find out about you. And at that point, you might expect an invite. But, from my perspective, like originally it was like my friends and, these people, were of a certain caliber that, other people of that caliber were excited to, be a part of it. And so, we've kept the quality really high by, having way more inbound, opportunities than we can possibly record. And that really keeps the quality up. And we have a, review system, and we kind of look at our library and say, okay, well, we have a hole here, GraphQL, sprouted up. Now people are using it in production. GitHub's using it. Okay, now let's do a series on GraphQL. Okay, who's the best instructor? Scott Moss has been, excited about it, using it on a startup, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it's kind of it's a mix of inbound and us kind of reviewing the inbound inquiries and making sure that we keep quality high, right?
David, you're muted.
Yeah, he's muted. Or something. We can't hear him.
No, I'm sorry. What?
That was your question. He was responding to you.
No, I was listening.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, at this point, we have a lot of people who want to do this, and we can, kind of look at the trends in the industry and make sure that we have production, people who are writing code on that technology and have a community presence. They're participating in the project, through open source or whatever. And we can, invite them to speak from a position of not only using it in production, but also having a good bearing on where the technology is headed in the future, so that, we're not recording stuff that's going to be out of date in 6 months. And even if it does, get out of date, we can just invite them back. And if they can't come, chances are somebody else can. So we sort of offer that instructor a first right of refusal and say, hey, this technology is getting out of date, come back. And if they say, no, but that so-and-so can do it, then we invite them. And if they can't, we find somebody else. So it's a process of making sure that we have the absolute best instructor for the particular topic. And that's a mixture of experience and active community participation.
Awesome. I'm going to get there one day. I see this list and I need to be in it. So one day I will get there. I'll get good at something one day and I'll find my way there.
Oh, come on.
How about starting a blog with David Walsh?
How about creating your first MooTools class? I don't know if that stands up in 2018, but I could teach it.
Oh, man. Yeah, you were talking about all these abstractions earlier, and I kind of look at the different frameworks having like a mix of lots of these abstractions, like Angular's like, let's adopt them all and bake them into, one framework. And so you have TypeScript and you have, Angular and you have Webpack and all this kind of stuff. And, I think it's getting simpler, but as we all learn these universal abstractions like TypeScript, then it will become more obvious. But yeah, it definitely is difficult if you don't learn each abstraction. If you're like thrown into a code base and you've never seen TypeScript, you're probably going to freak out. But if you understand what TypeScript's doing, you understand what JavaScript's doing, and you understand what the framework is doing, then it becomes a really productive environment to work in.
What is, out of curiosity, what is your most viewed class? What have people been really?
It changes, but right now, just because of what we're talking about, the fact that getting up in React is easy. Getting up and started with create React app. But if you want to learn Webpack and Redux and putting all this stuff together with React Router and all this kind of stuff, Brian Holt does a complete intro to React, which kind of goes through it adds one layer of abstraction as you need them. It's like, okay, now we need to swap out components and deal with navigation. Okay, now we add React Router. So he has a pretty large course, but it starts really simple with just React, and then you add a build step, then you add, you sort of add each piece as you go, and then you can see, okay, this is a finished app with paging and and Redux and all this kind of stuff, and async, whatever, and tree shaking and all this, cool stuff, and drop in Preact and all of that stuff at the end, but sort of like walking you through all those layers of abstraction. So that's definitely the most popular for that reason, because React doesn't give you enough out of the box. You have to add these kind of other tools. And so what are the best tools and how do you piece them together? That's the most popular, and it stood most popular for quite a while. And then you have our foundations, with Kyle Simpson. Deep JavaScript Foundations is just always incredibly popular, because what do developers, trip up with JavaScript? They trip up with scope and types, and they think JavaScript doesn't have types, but it clearly has types. You can course and all this kind of stuff. So the prototype system, functions, all that kind of stuff. And then, it depends. Like if we just released a course, like right now we just released Git, so it's really popular, and REST and GraphQL, it's really popular. But a lot of our foundational stuff, like JavaScript, the hard parts with Will Sentence, and data structures and algorithms, full stack, like basic sysadmin stuff, TypeScript, introduction to web development, state management with Redux, I could go on, but, ES6, grids and Flexbox, these are all the topics that we need to know to be productive in our day-to-day work. So of course they're going to be popular.
That's great, man. It's an awesome catalog. I've watched a bunch of them. I have one more question for you. Where do you kind of see the state of developer training in like the next 5 to 10 years? What do you see changing?
Wow. That's like at every conference, people are like, what is the future? And you always have the expert on the stage going like,
you're the expert on the stage right now, man.
I know, but like nobody ever has a good answer. What are we looking at? Are we looking at 5 years out? Like, I don't think a whole lot's going to change, other than the fact that, people's individual contributions just continue to level up. You see like, blog posts and books and everything, like you see the quality and the quantity just continue to go up of like independent, like all of us are random people from the Midwest, in reality, like that's what we are. But now you have random people from, every country in the world, just like, having access to the same material. So you're seeing like, cameras and stuff like drop in price, so the quality of video goes up, and you have some really interesting YouTube channels that are, coming out. And so that independent, funded by the community, I'd like to see that stuff continue to accelerate and thrive, because I mean, how cool is that to have like somebody funded by Patreon or whatever, just, an individual person making great material. And so that's what I like to see. I think more of that is going to come out, and we have to just continue to up our game. So every other publisher out there, has to evolve to make the code more easily accessible and relevant to our day-to-day work. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see how AI feeds into that, because there's already AI code plugins where all of a sudden you're coding something in it and it finds the solution or potential function that could solve what you're doing better. So like, is AI going to be an educational tool? I don't know. It depends on how far you're looking out. Like, is VR and AR going to be a thing? Like, clearly Pokemon Go was successful, right? But it died off. VR, like I've got a VR setup. We've got a VR setup at the office, and I play, Pavlov, like a shooter, and some other ones, on and off. And it's exciting to see the future, but like, is that stuff really going to take hold where, an instructor can just go and, pull up a graph of the code that they're working on to show like here's like the model and here's whatever. Like that would be cool. Like, right. Like a 3D GUI, like in front of a classroom or in front of, you've got a headset on and you can see everything. Like, who knows like where education goes. And there's like pills that you can now take that transfer information through the bloodstream or whatever. Like that's like long, I mean, that's
I know kung
like
fu.
No, but that's like reality, right? Like look it up, like quantum computing. How is that going to change it? Like, so, I mean, short term, like nothing's going to change other than the independent quality, when you can just see like a million different ways to start React. Well, you can create your own start React resource, and it's going to be higher quality because you have access to all this other stuff. And I like the individual voices, more voices coming online, sharing what they're doing in their work. And that's just going to continue to accelerate. But long term, I'm excited for all this other stuff. We have conversations at work. We have experiments. We play around with VR and drones and all that kind of stuff on our free time. And it's fun.
I tell you, somebody in our chat room was very upset that you said Pokemon Go was outdated. They were obviously playing it as you were speaking.
Okay. So they're listening to us while like playing Pokemon Go.
Stay safe out there, everybody.
Yeah.
Look both ways before you cross the street. Doesn't matter what Pokemon is out there. All right. So I think we had a good conversation today. Why don't we kind of go around and pull out some key takeaways before we wrap it up? David, what do you say that your key takeaway for the day is?
My key takeaway is that I need to take that React course to brush up. Jumping into the DevTools debugger at Firefox, which is built with React and Redux and such, there's a really steep learning curve, right? And I've sort of just thrust myself into it. But I think that seeing someone else go through each step and explain it might be a little bit more helpful than just diving in. I also think that it's important to recognize all of the different ways that people learn, right? Like a lot of people learn well by going to conferences, but it's tough to get to a conference, right? It's tough to get to anything where you need to be somewhere. So offering learning in a replayable video format is like so huge for people like myself, a ton of other people. So I think your service is really awesome.
I'd say the main thing that I pulled up was I've been coming back to a thing that Marc, you said about people needing to like keep up with the APIs. You said that's your job as a web developer, and I think that's really true. Of like, there's a certain base level of knowledge that we all need to be keeping up with, and if we're in a place that can help us get that ongoing education as part of our day job, that's awesome. If you're not getting that, maybe you shouldn't be there anymore because that needs to be part of, growing as a developer. And I think that's something that is often overlooked in our industry. But that's kind of a comment that I keep coming back to in my head. What about you, Marc? What would you say your core thing that you really want to talk about today was?
I really just like hanging out with you guys, and I'm no, and to hear and see David's voice is awesome because I've been a longtime fan, and it's like one of the few like OGs who is out there sharing like pure JavaScript knowledge, even before the Mo tools and jQuery days. Like, so that was really, really cool for me.
Yeah, it's awesome to meet you as well.
All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much, Marc, for coming on. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching live and probably later on the channel. If you have any suggestions on what we could be doing better or what kind of topics you'd like us to discuss, please let us know. We'll be back sometime next week. We'll get it on the schedule and let you know. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Goodbye.
Adios. Peace.